Imagine finding an old piece of cloth. On this cloth, you see a faint ghostly image. It looks like the full body of a man. This man has marks on his wrists, feet, and side. He appears to have worn a crown of thorns on his head. The image is not a painting. It is not a drawing. It is something else entirely, something that we still cannot fully explain. This is the mystery of the Shroud of Turin. For centuries, this single piece of linen has captivated millions. It has sparked fierce debate among scientists, historians, and believers. Is it a clever fake, or is it something truly miraculous? The Shroud of Turin is a long, rectangular piece of linen cloth. It measures about 4.4 meters by 1.1 meters. The image on it is a pale, sepia-toned negative of a crucified man. For many Christians, this is not just any man. They believe it is the image of Jesus of Nazareth. They think this is the very cloth that was used to wrap his body for burial after the crucifixion. This makes the shroud one of the most important and revered relics in the Christian world. It is seen as a direct physical link to the life and death of Jesus, a silent witness to the central event of their faith. The image itself is incredibly detailed. You can see the marks of a brutal flogging across the man's back. You can see the wounds where nails would have been driven through his wrists, not his palms, which is historically accurate for Roman crucifixions. There is a wound on his side, consistent with a spear thrust. The face is serene yet marked by suffering. What makes it so fascinating is how the image was formed. It seems to be a surface phenomenon, only affecting the very top fibers of the cloth. It does not contain any paint, dye, or pigment that we can identify, which deepens the mystery of its origin. The importance of the shroud goes beyond religion. It is also a historical puzzle box. If it is authentic, it is an archaeological artifact of immense value. It could tell us so much about Roman crucifixion practices and Jewish burial customs in the 1st century. However, if it is a fake, it is one of the most ingenious forgeries ever created. It would have been made by an artist of incredible skill and knowledge, centuries ahead of their time. Either way, the shroud forces us to ask big questions. It challenges our understanding of history, science, and faith, making it a subject of endless fascination and study. The story of the shroud is like a journey through history, but with many missing pages. Its early history is very unclear. Some believe it was the legendary image of Edessa, a holy cloth bearing the face of Jesus that was known in the early centuries of Christianity. This cloth was said to have healing powers and was kept in the city of Edessa, which is modern-day Şanlıurfa in Turkey, for a long time. It was later taken to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. But in 1204, the city was sacked by crusaders, and many of its treasures, including this holy cloth, disappeared. Was the Shroud of Turin this lost relic? We simply do not have the proof to connect them. The shroud's known history begins much later, in the middle of the 14th century. It suddenly appeared in a small town in France called Lirey. A French knight named Geoffroy de Charny owned it and put it on public display. This caused a big stir. The local bishop Pierre d'Arcis was very skeptical. He wrote a letter to the Pope, claiming that the shroud was a clever fake. He said he even knew the artist who had painted it. Despite his protests, people continued to come and see the shroud. It was seen as a powerful object of devotion, and its fame began to spread across Europe. For the next few centuries, the shroud changed hands several times. In 1453, the family of Geoffroy de Charny sold it to the House of Savoy, a powerful royal family. The Savoys took the shroud very seriously. They kept it safe in their capital, Chambéry, in a specially built chapel. In 1532, a disaster happened. A fire broke out in the chapel, and the silver box holding the shroud began to melt. A brave priest rushed in to save it. The molten silver and water used to douse the flames left burn marks and water stains, which are still visible on the cloth today. These marks became part of its long and dramatic story. In 1578, the shroud was moved to its current home, Turin, in Italy. The Duke of Savoy moved his capital there and brought the relic with him. It has remained in Turin ever since, which is why we call it the Shroud of Turin. For centuries it was owned by the Savoy royal family. They only showed it to the public on very special occasions. In 1983, the last king of Italy, Umberto II, died. In his will, he left the Shroud of Turin to the Vatican. Today it is kept in a high-tech, climate-controlled case in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, a silent object holding centuries of secrets. The mystery of the shroud took a dramatic turn in 1898. An amateur Italian photographer named Secondo Pia was allowed to photograph it during a rare public exhibition. When he developed the photographic plates in his darkroom, he was stunned. The negative image on his plates revealed a positive image of the man. It was clear, detailed, and lifelike, like a proper portrait. The faint image on the cloth was itself a photographic negative. This discovery was shocking. How could a medieval artist have created a perfect photographic negative, centuries before photography was even invented? This finding reignited interest in the shroud and marked the beginning of modern scientific investigation. For decades, scientists debated and studied Pia's photographs. But it was not until 1978 that a team of scientists got to examine the shroud directly. The Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STURP, was a team of mostly American scientists. They were given unprecedented access to the cloth for 5 days. They conducted a battery of non-destructive tests using spectroscopy, infrared imaging, and X-ray analysis. Their goal was to determine how the image was formed. After years of analysis, they concluded that the image was not a painting. They found no evidence of paint, pigments, or dyes. The image, they said, was the result of some process that discolored the linen fibers, but they could not explain what that process was. The most famous and controversial test came 10 years later, in 1988. The Vatican allowed small samples to be cut from a corner of the shroud for radiocarbon dating. This test measures the decay of carbon-14 to determine the age of organic materials. 3 separate laboratories in Switzerland, England, and the United States conducted the tests. Their results were all in agreement. They dated the linen cloth to the medieval period, between 1260 and 1390 AD. This date fits perfectly with the shroud's first appearance in historical records in France. For many, this was conclusive proof that the shroud was a medieval creation, not the burial cloth of Jesus. However, believers and even some scientists did not accept the carbon dating results. They have proposed several theories to challenge the findings. One idea is that the sample taken for the test was from a patch that was skillfully rewoven into the shroud during the Middle Ages to repair damage. Another theory suggests that the intense heat from the 1532 fire could have contaminated the cloth with new carbon, making it appear younger than it really is. Others argue that bacteria and fungi growing on the cloth over centuries could have skewed the results. Because of these challenges, the debate over the shroud's true age continues to this day. The Shroud of Turin divides people into 2 main camps: believers and skeptics. For believers, the shroud is a sacred relic. They point to the wealth of details that seem to align with the gospel accounts of Jesus' passion and death, the accuracy of the wounds, the presence of what appears to be blood, and the mysterious nature of the image itself are all seen as signs of its authenticity. For them, the 1898 photographic negative discovery was a turning point, revealing a hidden truth. They believe that no medieval forger could have possessed the anatomical and historical knowledge to create such a complex and accurate image, let alone one with 3-dimensional properties that scientists later discovered. On the other side are the skeptics. They argue that the shroud is a masterpiece of medieval artifice. The 1988 carbon dating results are their strongest piece of evidence, placing the cloth squarely in the Middle Ages. They point to the lack of any clear historical record of the shroud before the 14th century, as highly suspicious for such an important relic. Skeptics have proposed various methods for how a medieval artist could have created the image. Some suggest it was made using a simple camera obscura and light-sensitive chemicals. Others propose it was created by pressing a heated statue or bas-relief onto the cloth, a technique that could produce a similar scorch-like image. What makes the shroud so endlessly fascinating is that neither side can completely prove its case. Both believers and skeptics have compelling arguments, but also face unanswered questions. Believers must contend with the powerful scientific evidence of the carbon dating. How can the cloth be from the 1st century if the test says it is from the 14th? Skeptics, on the other hand, have a major challenge of their own. No one has ever been able to successfully replicate the image on the shroud with all its unique chemical and physical properties. Every attempt to recreate it has failed to match the original's complexity and subtlety. The Shroud of Turin remains a mystery locked in time. It is an object that sits at the crossroads of faith, science, and history. It is both a revered religious icon and a baffling scientific puzzle. The image on the cloth continues to stare back at us across the centuries, challenging our assumptions and defying easy explanation. It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge. So, as we look at this faint, ghostly image, we are left with a profound question. Are we looking at the work of a brilliant medieval artist, or are we looking into the face of history itself? What do you think?